Hi everyone, welcome to a kind of quick fireside chat that I'm having today with one of my colleagues, Alex Gibson. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen some of the brilliant podcasts and videocasts that have been going up on the FSP page over the last kind of number of months. This is not going to be one of them, but as you can see, very similar kind of background. Today's much more of an informal chat around some of the patterns and things that we are seeing in the industry, and hopefully having a bit of an interesting conversation around Microsoft Copilot ultimately and the use of AI. So, Alex, let's get kind of cracking and let's start with a little bit of background for yourself. Can you just talk through your story and how Copilot became part of that?
Sure. Thank you all for watching, firstly. I started in the oil and gas industry as an apprentice, is a sort of software developer slash platform manager, and I noticed quite early on that large companies were very conservative in what tools they gave and the risks they were prepared to take and how they were allowing their staff to work. It was a very low trust environment, and it wasn't just that, it was, to my mind, not really based on empirical evidence, but more sort of these abstract ideas of what people might do if we gave them more control, what people might do if we gave them more freedom, and just sort of this idea that employee freedom and security are a zero-sum game, which I don't think is the case. So I sort of somewhat naively assumed I had the right blend of technical skills, diplomacy, and posh boy confidence to sort of shift that culture slightly. And I made some progress, but when I moved from that to consultancy, transforming the way that businesses worked using automation technology, low-code workflows, modern workplace solutions became my sort of area of expertise, and that naturally evolved into artificial intelligence when generative artificial intelligence became commercially available, and then Copilot, being a Microsoft-aligned sort of subject matter expert, I suppose, that was a natural fit, that being Microsoft's entry into the Gen AI space. So that's it.
Cool, okay, thank you. And as you kind of touched on there, if we really break it down to basics, so you mentioned around generative AI, imagine I'm a child.
Yep,
explain it in the simplest possible terms. Kind of what is it, and I suppose why is it important?
Sure. So I think this is widely misrepresented, actually, and I would say that the best way to think about Gen AI is human learning is done left to right, front to back, in a structured, very rational way. So when you learn to speak, you learn letters, and then you learn words that are formed of letters, and then sentences that are formed of words, and then paragraphs formed of sentences. So this is sort of this structured, logical flow where you have rules sort of inherited from previous generations of concepts. It's a very elegant, structured way of understanding the world. That is not how machines learn at all. Machines start from, when we talk about machine learning, what we're talking about is starting from an existing body of evidence, an existing body of data, and working backwards. So it's an entirely different, it's not just automating human thinking, it's an entirely different architecture of thought and of cognition. And that's really exciting because it allows us to see patterns that we would not see using our left to right human way of thinking. It allows us to see things at a scale that we couldn't possibly see because of the limits of our human brains. In terms of Gen AI, what's really exciting is, again, starting from an existing body of data, the Reddit and public domain books and whatever academic journals they can get their hands on, training these models to work backwards and understand them, and then from that understanding that they've worked back to front to gain, we can now extrapolate from that and create new things. So that really is what Gen AI is the concept of a machine trained from an existing set of data that can then create novel things based on what it's learned from working backwards from what already exists. That's as simple as I can make it without sort of missing the point of what Gen AI is and why it's useful.
Sure. Okay. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of training. It's creating new things based on a bank of information that you teach it.
Yeah, that's even better than what I said. Yes, yes, that's exactly right.
Cool. Okay. And so, along the same lines, how does Copilot fit in there? How would you explain that?
Sure. So Copilot is really Microsoft's version of that. So artificial neural networks and deep learning, those are sort of agnostic concepts and agnostic technologies. Companies like OpenAI, so OpenAI has ChatGPT, Anthropic has Claude, Google has Gemini. So all of these big companies have their own products and services and models. Microsoft's go-to-market offering is Copilot, which is a range of AI-enabled products. The flagship one is Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's the one that sits in your Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook and can perform actions as you. So it's agentic. We'll come back to agentic AI. But that's really the key thing, is it's Microsoft's version of generative AI. And it's actually built on, I believe at time of recording, it's GPT 4.0. So they've borrowed or they've licensed OpenAI's most popular model, hosted it privately in Azure, which is their cloud infrastructure. And that is sort of the brain behind Copilot. So it's a nice example of sort of two massive organizations working together to deliver a commercial product.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the kind of experience that users get when using Copilot works across the Microsoft ecosystem, right?
Yes. So you can. So if you're lucky enough to have a license will set you back about £24 per user per month. So it's not cheap. It almost doubles the license footprint of each user. But it means that when you're in Outlook, there's a button that allows you to summarize your emails or write better emails, or even just things like give you feedback on the way you're writing. In Word, again, you can say, where in this long document have I contradicted myself? Are there any, how would this come across to a skeptical budget holder who's trying to prove this sale? And it's safe to do that. One of the biggest risks of what I would call consumer grade AI products, things like ChatGPT and Claude and Google Gemini, is there's no expectation of privacy at all, right? So if the product is free, you are the product, is a good rule of thumb. Because you're paying for Copilot and because there's an enterprise agreement in place, anything you say to it is not fed into the LLM. It uses a process called retrieval augmented generation, which we're not going to go into today, to sort of top up what the model already knows with your data, but that is then immediately forgotten, and there would be massive legal ramifications if Microsoft breached that agreement. So that's the other thing about Copilot, is not only is it built into your software, and it can see everything you can see, it is sort of safe in almost all cases for you to submit some of your most sensitive information to. Unlike the ChatGPTs of the world, which are not safe for you to put anything confidential in at all.
Okay. I know there's obviously a lot more that we can talk about, and maybe it's one for another day, but
Sure.
around, how people can govern data with things like Purview and
Yeah.
Defender Cloud and things like that, right? There's a lot that you can do in the Microsoft space to kind of lock stuff down, I suppose.
Absolutely. There's a huge amount you can do out of the box with the Purview set of tools. Purview, for those of you who don't, is what the sort of security and compliance center in Microsoft 365 used to be called. Microsoft's go-to-market for security, compliance, and governance. Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of tools in there to make things safer. It's certainly fair to say that a lot of our customers were living on borrowed time. And by that I mean their permission management internally was quite relaxed because they didn't have a piece of technology that would expose how much oversharing had already taken place. The problem with introducing agentic AI solutions like Copilot into your slightly neglected RBAC, your role-based access control, is it then doesn't create additional vulnerabilities, it just reveals the vulnerabilities that were already there. So it is super important to use tools like Purview, and in some cases even run custom PowerShell scripts to do a sort of audit of your data, tidy that up, get rid of the worst offending cases before you then introduce the magic robot that can see everything.
So I think that's probably a good point to kind of talking around, I suppose, some of the risks and things like that. So, you know, if you were talking to an organisation who were maybe a bit more kind of AI hesitant at the moment, is there one thing that you think is a good first step forward that you might recommend?
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the Microsoft, if you're Microsoft aligned as an organisation, if you're sort of built on G Suite and Google Cloud, that really isn't my area of expertise. But if you're Microsoft aligned, it's a really good idea to start with what's called Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, which is sort of the slimline version of the full Copilot Microsoft 365 product. So it's sort of like a private version of ChatGPT. So if you're not ready to release agentic AI into your ecosystem, which is fair enough, it's costly and there's risks in doing that, but you want to do more than nothing in the AI space and you want to keep things safe and secure, provided you're on an E3 or E5 license, I think there are some business license that covers it, but I'd have to double check that. You get access to the Copilot chat for free, and that's a really good starting point. Again, there's OpenAI's models behind it, secure for enterprise use. It can't see any of your data except what you put into the chat window. So that's a really, really healthy first step to say we want to give users something, we want to get the productivity benefits of AI, but we're not ready to build it straight into our ecosystem. That's a really good middle ground that sort of buys you a little bit of breathing room.
And even within that kind of initial step forward, there's a lot of value, I suppose, that, you know, users in the knowledge workspace can start to kind of get from using that tool, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you know, I've done a bunch, but I wonder if there's a few examples or kind of low-hanging fruit that you see often for I suppose use cases of that people might be able to start to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking the chat version or the full version?
Well, I mean, let's talk through both. I mean,
Sure.
I think let's start with the chat and then kind of go to full fat.
I think the chat version, there's sort of basic things of you copy and pasting emails and going, how does this come across? Or my favorite one is like, on my best day, like I'm a pretty slick diplomat, but on an average day, like a normal Monday, not so much. So one of my favorite things to do is like, I need to explain this thing to a customer, or I need to explain this thing to a colleague. Please explain this in a sort of more marketable way, in a way that's kinder and softer and is not it's gonna have the same content but sort of packaged in a more compassionate way. So use cases like that are really, really powerful. The other thing you can do with Copilot Chat that not a lot of people are aware of is, whilst it can't see your data, you can upload one file at a time. So you could, if you've just written a report, you could attach it to your chat window and say, give me feedback, or score this out of 100. You know, if you had half an hour to fix it, what would you do? And having sort of an impartial assistant who is not going to judge you, give you feedback instantly on how to improve something is unbelievable. It completely changes the way you think about work, and you know, it's actually really difficult to get humans to review a document on your behalf. You can maybe get someone to do it once, but once you've made improvements to it, good luck getting them to read that 20-page document a second time. It's super hard. Whereas Copilot doesn't mind how many times you ask it. So those are really good things to start with. On the full version, that can see all your data. Some of the easiest things to do are to transcribe your meetings, and it can summarize the action, so it becomes sort of the note taker in meetings, which is really good. Something I do every day is I'll say, Copilot, give me a table of all the things that have been asked of me that I haven't yet responded to, where I haven't responded to it. So it sort of becomes my little task manager, which is absolutely phenomenal. But I'd say my hidden gem is the researcher agent, which is only came out at time of recording maybe 2 weeks ago, and that's sort of the equivalent of a GPT-03 for people who are super into this. It's sort of a deep reasoning model, so it takes sometimes a minute, 2 minutes to come back, but it really thinks. So when you need sort of that chain of thought, or you need it to work through a problem step by step, the research agent is super powerful at doing that. So there are, I would say, the majority of customers probably who have that capability available to them are not aware it exists. So that's, again, in the Copilot space, that's the first kind of chain of thought reasoning model that they've introduced and is going massively unused by the user community.
And so that's available for anyone with the full-fat Copilot
anyone
license?
with the full-fat license, yes, and that's available today. You just have to add the agent to your little app. There's a button to do it.
Okay.
Just the research agent.
Very interesting. Okay. And sorry, just on that, because again, it's not something that I'd heard of yet.
No. Why would you?
So can you maybe give an example of, a use case for that, or somewhere where maybe you've seen like a good output that's come from using it?
If you're trying to, so for example, one of the things that you need, I mean, you still have to check the sources, but in terms of amalgamating reliable sources, it's really, really good at this. So you'd say, if I have a customer that has an enterprise E3 license and they have the Azure AD Pack 2 or whatever it is, and they have the various bolt-ons, and they have 200 Vivo licenses, and they have ECDN licenses for 500 of their users. Can they use this technology or not? Because the Microsoft licensing model is so complex. Having someone who can go away and research all the sources and layer that logic on top of each other and give you a straight yes or no answer and then show it's working, that is unbelievable. And the reason that's a good example is the cost of you getting that right and wrong could be tens of thousands of pounds. If you're using something you're not licensed for, it's technically possible, but you're supposed to license everyone who benefits, not just everyone who uses it. So Viva Amplify is a really good example of this. The model for that is you have to license everyone who benefits from Viva Amplify. But a lot of organizations assume, I just need to license the 5 comms people who are going to use it. And they are unpleasantly surprised at the end of the year when they get a massive bill for these under-licensed product that they haven't been paying for properly. So as a really simple example, the research agent is phenomenal at giving you accurate, well-reasoned, cited responses to questions on contracts, questions on licensing, questions on the legality of what software, what it does, where it stores your data. Would you be breaching your business indemnity insurance by using this product? Again, transparent chain of thought, legwork is what the research agent's really, really good at.
Okay. So sort of really in-depth. Yeah, I mean, sounds really good.
I think that's the key thing about AI is a lot of the faster models it's closer to memory than it is than thinking, and the reasoning models, it's closer to kind of step-by-step thinking. It's still not step-by-step thinking as a human would do it, but given that it takes 2 minutes and it will do 80-90% of the work for you, that's an incredible force multiplier to have.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, that's really interesting. And just, I guess, further on from that, so obviously you do a lot of work with a number of our clients around all of these bits that we're kind of talking about here. Yeah. So are there kind of any examples that you've seen of, and it could be good, it could be bad, but where people are actually kind of using Copilot out in the wild right now?
Oh God, loads. I mean, my favourite example, and the most heartwarming one, is, and I didn't really see this coming. It was someone else's idea. I can't say who it was for. It's for a large government department, and they decided they wanted a cohort. They have a neurodivergent community, dyslexia, dyspraxia, OCD, that kind of thing, and they deliberately gave it to those people on the assumption that it would make work easier for them. And the performance increase for those individuals, it's almost like a sort of digitally mitigating all the challenges that comes with having ADHD or being on the autism spectrum. It was unbelievable. It was like they became completely different people now that they had somebody to consolidate all their work for them and to rewrite their communications with them and to manage their competing demands for their time. So the impact that a full Copilot license had on a neurodivergent individual was significantly greater than on someone who was neurotypical. And that's something that I didn't even consider, thinking about. It just wasn't an idea that entered my mind until someone else in the government had the idea, and we went, sure, we can try that. And we did the numbers and the research, and the results were astounding. So using it as an accessibility, as an inclusivity tool, as a force multiplier to sort of, to what would you say, to sort of level out people's individual weaknesses, irrespective of where they come from, I think is a really, really empowering use case.
I think, like you say, it's really powerful, isn't it, when it's a use case that's so different like that, more aligned to kind of employee engagement, well-being, outside of the normal things I think people think of with benefits to AI, of things like cost reduction and time saving. It's it's making a tangible difference to someone's career in that aspect.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I think those are the real use cases that are really interesting and I think resonate with a lot of people, and they're a bit different.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good. So do we, if we're hand on our hearts, being honest with ourselves, do we always promote the best people or the hardest workers or the people who add the most value, or do we sort of people who are sort of good at playing the game and who are good at playing politics and who are, I mean, I don't know, I'm not here to judge, but I just think when those things can become sort of, when those soft skills can be sort of artificially enhanced, people's specialist skills sort of shine through, the contrast becomes clear. So I think that's it's a really interesting sort of equalizer in terms of some of those, softer, more general business skills that perhaps are overvalued in the modern workplace.
I think it levels the playing field more, right? And
people who are super talented but are not good at office politics are massively underrepresented in leadership teams. And I think tools like this perhaps bridge that gap slightly. Well, more than slightly. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so just to kind of finally wrap up kind of our chat today. Sure. So if we're looking forward 5 years, what do you, I suppose, kind of hope to, what do you hope to see AI being in the workplace at that time?
Oh, wow. I think probably I want to see better user education. I think that's super important. I should be able to point to anybody in any business 5 years from now and go, what do we mean by probabilistic decision making? What do we mean by probabilistic predictions? And they should be able to go, I know exactly what that means. And if and what do we mean by modal bias in training data? And I'm not doing this in sort of an indulgent, sort of elitist, technocrat kind of way. I just think it's really important we understand how these machines make their decisions and how their biases are formed and how they might manifest themselves. And until that is well understood, I think we are at tremendous risk of people treating AI models like they're all-seeing and all-knowing, which they are, just anything but. So I think better literacy around large language models in particular, but AI modeling generally and machine learning generally just needs to get better. And we'll find better, less jargony terms to describe these things. But I think that's probably the first thing. And the second thing I think is treating AI kind of as you touched on, sort of as a holistic benefit for all, as opposed to a how do we squeeze more out of our employees? Using it as an employee experience tool, using it as an inclusivity tool, using it as a work-life balance tool, as well as using it as a purely profit-driven, performance-enhancing tool. So I think that would be, if we could mature our understanding of the technology as a community, as a user base, and if we could mature our use of it from the sort of supply side, I would be very happy.
Okay. No, I think it's a good answer. Like we say, there's loads of benefits to this stuff, right? And I think the more ways that businesses see those benefits, the better. But some of those ones that we've talked about with the particular use case of that kind of inclusivity piece, I think is really, really interesting. And hopefully, we can see much more examples of that coming through.
I'd love to see it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you very much for having kind of a brief chat with me today. So I hope that this conversation was of some use to
somebody,
to someone out there. Yeah. So, like we sort of said, there's a lot of really interesting and much more higher quality videocasts going out at the moment, and over the last few months. And I think we're keen to do more of these short form videos to really get some of the conversations out there that are happening in FSP and all across the industry, so that we can share knowledge as we have it. So please do let us know if there was anything valuable from this, and if there's more that you're keen to understand around the kind of AI and Copilot space. But we'll definitely be back with more very soon.
Until next time.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks all.